How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to On the Ball. Welcome back to another Review the Prem episode. It is the international breaks, a couple of weeks to go until we do give you our next round of predictions. But on Thursday, we went through our game week 4 predictions. Me and Sim went head to head in predicting the Premier League outcomes. Just before we did, the scores were 43-46 in favour of myself. And the way the scoring works, it's 5 points for a completely correct result, 5 points for a completely correct scoreline, 1 point for a correct result. And the star man, once you pick them, you cannot pick them again for the rest of the season. And it's 5 points for a goal, 2 points for an assist. So let's see how we got on, starting on with the Friday night football, Luton against West Ham, and Luton's first ever home game in the Premier League. I went 3-1 to West Ham. Sim went 1-0 to West Ham, so we get a point each there. And I actually thought it was going to happen right at the end when Luton did get that consolation goal, but West Ham just couldn't find that extra goal. But look, I thought it was majority one-way traffic throughout the game. Luton do look like a very poor Premier League side, to be honest, not going to lie. And you're looking at Luton at the moment, and I think a lot of people were saying the same things like, are they going to beat Derby's record, basically?
Yeah, looking like it at the moment, the way they're playing. I think in this game, I thought 2-1. I wouldn't say it flattered them, because I thought actually West Ham did struggle to create real good quality chances, and it was just a few moments of quality, which obviously they end up getting their goals. A brilliant cross by Paquetá for Bowen's header. Maybe a poor bit of keeping, should have kept out. But I thought West Ham were a lot of possession, but no real bite to their possession. And Luton were holding strong, and but at the end of the day, they just didn't have the quality to hurt West Ham. They did get a goal maybe against run of play later on, and maybe, could have had a penalty right at the end. Handball from Ward-Prowse. Maybe West Ham consider themselves a bit lucky, but I don't think Luton would have deserved maybe a draw out of that game. I thought West Ham probably deserved the victory, and Luton, it looks like it's going to be a long, hard season for them, because when they go forward, you're just looking for, apart from Morris, who actually looks quite handy, like there's just no quality out going forward at the moment. Ross Barkley looks like a terrible signing as well early doors. He hasn't really found any sort of spark, so I'm struggling to see the quality in Luton right now. But then again, Bournemouth lost 9-0 early on last season. They were all thrilled to see they were going down. They seem to turn it around. So it's very early days, but right now they look like they're struggling.
Yeah, and I would say the same probably for all three clubs that got promoted, to be honest, but Luton especially. But let's move on to the Saturday football. 12:30 kickoff was at Bramall Lane. It finished 2-2, Sheffield United against Everton. Both of us going for 1-0 to Everton, and we kind of thought it was going to be a very dull game, not many goals, but Everton take the lead early. Sheffield United turn around the result by half time, and then Everton got a goal just after the break, and there was no more goals after that. Arnaut Danjuma scoring his first goal in the Premier League for Everton. And look, I thought maybe Everton created the better chances throughout the day, but I thought probably a draw might have been a fair result. Yeah,
Beto had a pretty good debut. I thought he was giving Sheffield United centre-backs a really hard day throughout the game. Danjuma was getting in all sorts of positions. They went 1-0 up early on, and they had a few other chances to make it 2, and I think 2-0 up, it may be a different game, but they weren't clinical enough. And on the breakaway, Cameron Archer with 2 really good moments for him, and it was against run of play, but I think maybe they showed, especially Archer, like he looked really good, really sharp going in the forward line, and they signed him for 20 million, I think, from Aston Villa. And I think maybe you can see why they would decide to get that money, because the second goal was especially a bit of individual quality from the edge of the box, culled it in. Obviously it hit the post and it hit Pickford, but it was a brilliant strike from Cameron Archer, and that did put them 2-1 up. It looked like Sheffield United maybe with how Everton were not being clinical enough, maybe they could have enough to take the win. Everton did create more chances that second half. Good goal by Danjuma, but they might consider themselves a bit lucky, because right at the end, Pickford makes an absolutely unbelievable double save. I think it's the last action of the game. Tips a McBurney header onto the bar, and then saves the follow-up as well. And that moment probably earned them a point. So I think they'll probably breathe a big sigh of relief they got the point. But overall, they'll probably be a bit frustrated that they haven't taken all 3, given the balance of play.
Yeah, and you're looking at Everton now, first 4 games of the season, 3 losses with no goals, and then they finally get their goals and they draw away at Bramall Lane to Sheffield United, another relegation candidate. So, I mean, right now, as things stand, with the way everyone's playing their football, Everton are banging that relegation battle again, aren't they?
100%, and they'll be relieved to finally get off the board with a point, but I think it's going to be a big struggle for them to stay in this league right now. I think swapping Maupay for Beto's probably more suited to how Sean Dyche wants to play. So I think that's a good move. But I'm just struggling to see, like, if they're struggling to beat Sheffield United away, considering they lost 3 on the bounce already before that. I'm sure they'll have performances where their finishing's better than it has been the first 3 games. But that ability, that clinical edge to put the ball in the back of the net that's been missing the first 3 games has really cost them points, because they have had chances. So it's going to be about whether Sean Dyche can create enough for them where they've got the players going forward to put the ball in the back of the net, and right now they're struggling with that. So I think they're still going to be confident of staying up, but right now they're in a bit of trouble.
I think their next couple of games are Luton at home and Bournemouth at home, so they really need to get points on the board in both of those 2 games if they don't want to really get embroiled so early in the talk of the relegation.
I think Arsenal's next, no?
Sorry, Arsenal and then them too. So I mean, Arsenal, you got to say that.
Don't expect anything.
You don't expect anything.
They beat them last season, though, didn't they?
Yeah, it's true. But I mean, those 2 games, the Luton at home, they have to take 3 points no matter what. And Bournemouth at home as well. You got to imagine they got to take points in that game as well. Next up is Tottenham against Burnley at Turf Moor. Sim went 3-0. I went 2-0. It did finish 5-2 to Tottenham Hotspur. And Burnley started the game really well, actually. I keep forgetting his name, that winger.
Foster. Koleosho.
Koleosho and Foster, both of them were causing Spurs problems. Koleosho absolutely burned Porro in the opening stages of that game. And then Burnley go 1-0 up really early. But after that, it was pretty much one-way traffic for the rest of the game. I thought Spurs were breathtaking throughout the game. Many players were playing at the top of their level, top of their game. And Spurs ran out really deserved victors. And I think, like, when you're looking at teams and their attacking displays this season, I don't know any team that is playing as fluid and as and getting as many goals and winning as convincingly as Spurs at the moment.
Yeah, I think going to Turf Moor in years gone past, you're expecting like a really tight, hard game and like against an aggressive team who are well organised. But going up to Burnley, it was a very different Burnley to years gone by, and they're playing a different style, playing out the back, pressing high, playing with a lot of risk. And in the first exchanges of the game, it was working for them. But unfortunately, I think that approach was their undoing, because Tottenham just kept finding Son in behind time and time again and destroying them in the transition. And once Spurs took control of the game as well, they just had far too much quality. Company alluding to that after the game, saying, you know, when they took control, there was just some points where they just had too much for us. We couldn't handle it. And when you have the quality of Maddison and Son in the forward line, you know that if you give them opportunities, they're gonna take them. And that's exactly what happened. Maddison with a fantastic finish, 3 brilliant finishes from Son, a great goal from Mera as well. And so Tottenham just keep rolling with the brilliant football and some high quality goals as well. And this is like, I think we've been threatening to put in this kind of performance early on, and maybe the attack hasn't quite clicked as well as it did in this game, but finally it did. And maybe having Son in the centre was contributed to that. But it was a really vibrant, creative performance from Spurs. But Burnley have got to sort out how they approach these games against bigger teams, because that's 3 out of 3 losses now. Look, to be fair, it's been difficult games, City, Villa and Spurs, but they've approached the game with a lot of naivety, and they just haven't had the quality to keep playing the way they've been playing in the Championship and trying to get good results against these kind of teams.
Yeah, 100% agree. And we've got to talk about Heung-min Son. Obviously, you mentioned that he moved into the number 9 position this game, completely shown up Richarlison for the first 3 games, scores a hat-trick straight off the bat. And that's the first of many hat-tricks we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, definitely today. And he was exemplary. You know that running in behind, he's one of the most dangerous players in the Premier League. And when he gets in those positions one-on-one facing the keeper, there's not many more deadly players in Europe than Heung-min Son. So no surprise that once he got those opportunities, he took them on aplomb. And it was nice to see him back on form. And hopefully that's a sign of things to come for him.
Yeah. And I think like even before this game, he was growing in form. His performances were growing game on game. And this game moving into the centre just took it up to a different level. But let's move on to Brentford against Bournemouth. Finished 2-2 on the day. Sim went 2-0. I went 2-1, both to Brentford. And you know what? I think Brentford should have won this game, to be honest. I thought they dominated proceedings. They were dominating possession, but Bournemouth kept hitting them on the break. They did in the beginning of the game. 7 minutes in, Bournemouth go 1-0 up. Solanke equals it up about 15 minutes to go before the half. And And I really thought Brentford were the better team in this game, but Bournemouth just kept getting these little breakaways and causing Brentford problems, and actually high quality chances as well. And then Bournemouth did take the lead with 10 minutes to go, and you're thinking, wow, and a great 3 points for Bournemouth. But Brian Mbeumo once again this season pulls through for Brentford and gets that equaliser right at the end.
Yeah, and I thought this game actually maybe went differently to how you expect. I thought, considering both teams' approaches, you would have thought that Bournemouth might be the team looking to dominate possession, and you would have thought Brentford would have been the team looking to hit them on the transition. But it was actually the opposite. Brentford were the team with a lot of the ball and with all the play, and Bournemouth were the ones hitting them on the counter-attack, and that would really frustrate Brentford because you expect them to be a lot tighter defensively potentially than they were in this game. Maybe they thought at home to Bournemouth they're going to be a bit more expansive, and to be fair, they created enough chances. I think apart from the goals they scored, they hit the post a couple of times as well, and I believe from the for Brooks's goal, which put Bournemouth 1-0 up, that was literally a counter-attack from when Brentford hit the post. So that must be very frustrating for Brentford as well. But what a bit of quality from Mbeumo for the final goal. What a turn, and runs in behind and a cool finish as well. I think this guy is developing into one of the top wingers in the league. I really believe so. I think he's got so much ability, and he's getting better season on season. And the only down point I had from him from when he first came into the league was his output. I thought maybe he's a bit consistent with his finishing, and he used to hit the post a lot rather than scoring. Last season, his goal scoring got a bit better, 9 goals and 8 assists, I think. And I think he started the season on fire as well. So I reckon he could be in for a big move in the next year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he's a top player, top player. And he's so young still as well. Because he's been around the Premier League since Brentford came up, you're thinking, all right, maybe he's in his mid-20s or late 20s or something. But he's still in his early 20s. And I think I would take him at Spurs.
He just
100%.
Looks older as well. You just look at him, you think he's like at least late 20s, but no, he's really young, and I think he's really underrated.
Yeah. Next up, Chelsea against Nottingham Forest. I say a battering at the Bridge. A win at the Bridge for Nottingham Forest. It finished 1-0. Sim went for 1-1, so he did kind of see it coming. I said 2-0 to Chelsea. But Chelsea had 76 possession on the day, 21 shots on goal with only 2 on target, and 2.3 XG, but just couldn't find the net, Chelsea. What is going on at Stamford Bridge at the moment? What is going on with Pochettino? Doesn't seem all right there. Is there just too many players being bedded in at the same time?
I think it's a lot of players with a lot of inexperience as well, and I think they've cobbled it all together and I don't know if they expect it to click straight away. Maybe this is part of the process, and maybe Bowley's willing to be patient, but when you spent £1 billion, I think maybe Bowley, I don't know what he's thinking right now, but does he expect Chelsea to be in the top 4 this season or to be in a title challenge? Because right now it's very difficult for Pochettino to be managing this squad, and I'm looking at their squad, to be honest, and the amount of money they spent, I'm like, is that all it gets you, £1 billion? I mean, it's a good squad, but is it that good? And I don't think we're going to be seeing the best of a lot of these players for a while, because they're all very young. Yeah, I mean, you've got people like Palmer who've only started 3 games. You've got Madueke, who's had maybe a couple seasons at the Eredivisie. Jackson's had 1 season in La Liga. There's a difference between signing young players, but young players with experience. Like what Arsenal did was different. Ramsdale was young, but he's been playing top level football for a while. Same with Ben White, young but playing for a while. Saka is young, but he's been in the Arsenal first team now for about 3 years, so he's had over 100 games. So I think for Chelsea, they've got a lot of young players, but a lot of them are still very early in their careers, in terms of game time, not just age as well. So the problem I see with Chelsea is what you need with young players is you need to give them time on the pitch, and you need to allow them to develop, because the Chelsea players they have don't have that much game time at top level football right now. But they keep adding more and more to the squad, so it's limiting the game time these young players are getting at the moment, and that I see as a bit of a concern. You can't keep adding young players and then not give them the game time that they need to develop, and keep chopping and changing all the time. So I think they're in a bit of trouble, but I do reckon Pochettino will get it right eventually. I think it's teething problems. You remember her early days at Spurs, how bad it was? It was really bad early days at Tottenham, and he nearly lost his job in a couple of months.
It's a different project though, the Spurs project and the Chelsea project. I mean, he was coming into the season, Pochettino, saying this is Chelsea, they need to win now, we need to win this season, blah blah blah. It ain't going to happen with the squad that they've got. They need at least 1 or 2 years to give this squad experience. The Spurs team that he had, I mean, there was a lot of experience sprinkled around the youth there. You had Moussa Dembele, you had Jan and Toby, you had kind of all these kind of players that were kind of sprinkled in there that had a lot of experience and a lot of know-how around the game. You just don't have that at Chelsea, and I think Chelsea will get it right, and I think Pochettino is the man to do it, and I think this kind of squad is a squad that he can definitely work with. But if they think that it's going to happen this season, they're deluding themselves, because it's not. And I think that they're going to have to go through a lot of pain, maybe this season and potentially even next season as well. But I think if they stick together and if they go in the way that Poch wants them to go, I think all these players will, not all of them, but a lot of them will come through the other side and reap the benefits for it. But they're going to go through a lot of struggle, in my opinion.
I just do wonder if they do have a poor look. It's obviously very early, but I just wonder if they are having a poor season and they end up finishing like 7. Like obviously they finished 12, so anything above that's an improvement. But if they do finish like 7th or 8th, will Bowley and the fans have the patience to be like, no, we're going in the right direction, or they'll be like, we spent $1 billion and we're 8th, it's a disgrace, that kind of thing. So it could go in either direction at the moment for Chelsea. In terms of the game itself, I thought, Chelsea huffed and puffed without really doing much, especially in the first half. They obviously did have that big chance right at the end through Nick Jackson, which is one of the misses of the season, missing an open goal. He is stretching for it, but he's inside the 6-yard box and he blazes it over the bar, and he'll be very disappointed with that. I'll probably be thinking about that when he goes to sleep after that. Nottingham Forest, though, good counter-attacking performance. Elanga with a really lovely finish to put them 1-0 up. And I've been saying Forest have found this new solidity and giving even the bigger teams away from them a bit of trouble. Yes, they ended up losing to Arsenal and United, but they didn't make it easy for them. And I thought they made it difficult for them. And I thought Chelsea coming up against that, considering how I haven't been that impressed with them, it's like against Luton, I know they won 3-0, wasn't that impressed with them. And I thought they struggled to really break Forest down. And I think Forest will feel like they deserve the win. But they have to say, Chelsea did that with that chance with Jackson. They'll feel like they definitely should have taken a point from the game at least.
Yeah, 100%. I'm looking at their team now. I mean, they do have quite a lot of experience sprinkled in that team with Raheem Sterling, Ben Chilwell, Moises Caicedo, Thiago Silva, Levi Colwill, who's been doing it in the Premier League, Enzo Fernandez, a World Cup winner. So they should be doing a lot better than they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's experience. Like Caicedo's, he's been in the Premier League for 18 months. So look, and he's still 21. Malagusto's very inexperienced. Chilwell's very experienced. Colwill was only been playing for 6 months, really, because he only broke into the Brighton team last season in January. Disasi's only really had a year at Monaco. Sanchez was playing, maybe he's been number 1 for Brighton for a bit, but I've never been that impressed with him, to be honest. So I think it's like experience, but a lot of them are like still very early on in their careers.
Yeah. Next up is Man City against Fulham, and I had a feeling this one could be a bit of a battering. I went 3-0 to City, you went 2-0 to City, so we both get a point for this one. And Erling Haaland back at it once again with a hat-trick. 2 late goals for Erling in the 70th and the 95th minute, and it was pretty much one-way traffic throughout the whole game. Fulham got an equaliser straight after Man City took the lead, and then after that Nathan Ake put them 2-1 up just before the break, and after that it was just absolutely an onslaught from Man City. Erling Haaland getting a hat-trick in the second half.
But I feel Fulham have a massive right to be aggrieved with the Ake goal. It was 1-1. It's just before half-time, and if they go in at half-time 1-1, it's a different game in my opinion, and Fulham have something to hang on to. And that goal was clear offside. I cannot believe that the referees VAR looked at that and thought that goal should have stood. The goal, Akanji was clearly in Leno's side. It clearly affected Leno, the fact that Akanji was standing ahead of him. Akanji had to move out the way of the ball, and it made Leno hesitate because it looked like Akanji might have touched it, and ended up going. I think that hesitation actually led to Leno not saving the shot and going in the back of the net, and I just think it's an absolute howler from VAR. I think Marco Silva has the absolute right to feel very aggrieved. But to be fair, it was one-way traffic. When Fulham scored, it was completely against the run of play, even though they scored straight after going 1-0 down. So they got a bit lucky with that moment. Obviously, Man City, you expect them to dominate these games and open up Fulham, and that's exactly what they did in the second half, especially when Fulham are chasing the game and opening up a bit. Man City are just going to take them to the sword, and that's what they did. But I feel for Marco Silva because that goal should not have stood, and at 1-1, who knows what might have happened at half-time at 1-1.
I don't get how they don't disallow the goal. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, these referees, every single weekend we seem to be talking about a crazy decision, and this was just another one to add to the referees' repertoire of mad decisions this season.
It's such an easy decision. This one wasn't even controversial. It's a very simple decision. Akanji was very clearly right in front of Leno. I don't understand why they even considered not overturning it. It was a very clear offside, in my opinion. So crazy. But Haaland, after 4 games last season, 6 goals. 4 games this season, 6 goals.
Yeah.
Is he going to get more than he did last season?
Well, he's on track for the same at the moment. But yeah, I think you can pretty much give him the golden boot now, to be honest.
To keep pace with last season, he'll have to get a hat-trick in his next game. I wouldn't put it past him. I don't know they have.
Who do Man City have next?
West Ham away.
I mean,
you never know.
It's not a foregone conclusion, is it?
No.
But let's move on to the 5:30 kickoff, which was Brighton against Newcastle. 3-1 to Brighton on the day. Both of us going for Newcastle wins. I went 2-1. Sim went 2-0. And Brighton have this knack under De Zerbi where when they have a bad performance and they have a bad result, they always respond and they always come back stronger. And that was the same case as it was this weekend against Newcastle. 18-year-old Evan Ferguson. What a player this guy is and what a player he's going to be. A hat-trick on the day. Look, I think Newcastle's defending was a bit shocking for some of these goals, especially the second one where he picks the ball up midway into the Newcastle half. And there's just no Newcastle players anywhere near him. Don't take anything away from Ferguson, though, because the finish was absolutely sublime. But I don't know what Newcastle were playing at some points in this game.
100%. I think the game maybe went as you expected, with Brighton dominating possession and Newcastle looking to hit them in the space and behind. And to be fair, for the first half an hour or so, Newcastle probably having the better chances, and it looked like that it was going to be probably a good game for Newcastle. But Brighton did take control. I thought the first goal was a defensive disaster. First of all from Pope, bad kick out, and then fumbles the shot from Billy Gilmore, falls to Evan Ferguson, and that showed one side of Evan Ferguson, the ability to be a poacher in front of goal. Then the second goal showed his quality from range with a brilliant side-footed finish from 25 yards, more bad defending from Newcastle. And at that point, at 2-0, Newcastle seemed to give up. Like, they didn't even seem to get any sort of response going 2-0 down. You thought a team like Newcastle, the quality they have, they would have may have found that fire and had a period in the game where it looked like they were going to get back into it. But at 2-0, like, Brighton just went on, and obviously they got a bit luck with the third one, a big deflection. But if you look at the replay of that deflection, like, it's just lazy from the Newcastle defenders again. Fabian Schär just turns away, throws a lazy leg at the ball, and ends up deflecting to the back of the net. And obviously at 3-0 the game said they did get consolation through Callum Wilson. But brilliant display from Brighton. Evan Ferguson is an absolute star in the making, 18 years of age, and to do that against a good team like Newcastle is no mean feat. That's really, really special. And his all-round game seems really good as well. He's strong, he can hold players off, he can link the play, and he seems to have the knack of very good finishes as well. So it looks like, I think he's one of the youngest players to ever score a hat-trick in the Premier League after that. So unbelievable. But if you talk about Newcastle, something's a bit off at the moment with Newcastle. I know they've had 3 tough games. They just lost to City, Liverpool and Brighton, so they're not easy games. But last season, it took them 29 games to lose 3. This season, they've just lost 3 on the trot or in the first 4 games. And you would have thought, adding Tonali into that midfield, having people like Barnes in the transfer market as well, they would have upped their level. And I don't know, I wouldn't say maybe against Liverpool and City this was the case, but definitely in this game, there definitely seemed a lack of real passion and aggression, which you associate with that Newcastle team last season, that just outrunning every opponent, just giving everything on the pitch. And there seemed to be a lethargy yesterday on the weekend. They seemed to be completely off it. And apart from a few moments where they were breaking, where Isaac had a couple of opportunities, they just seemed a lack of creativity as well. And that's got to be a bit of a concern, because you would have thought that this would be a big season, full of excitement for Newcastle. But for the last 3 games, especially this one, there's got to be a few alarm bells ringing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to lose 3 of your first 4, no matter who they're against, I mean, they were pulling off results against the biggest teams in the league last season.
And against 10-man Liverpool Newcastle as well. You've got to add that in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, I expected Newcastle to maybe have some poor results when the Champions League starts coming around. You look at their Champions League group this year, I mean, it's an incredibly difficult group. So I think, you've got to expect results. I expected results to dip when the Champions League comes around, but when you're having these results and the Champions League hasn't even started yet, I think Newcastle fans should be a bit worried about their Premier League form this season, to be honest. And we both predicted Spurs to actually finish above Newcastle this season. And that ain't looking like a bad shout at the moment, 4 games in.
And also, one guy I want to point out is Tonali, because I thought he was atrocious throughout the game. And especially for that first goal, really lazy, a really lazy clearance, not looking to block the shots and putting his body on the line. And all the narrative when he signed was he didn't look happy when he signed for Newcastle. It looked like he wanted to stay in Milan. And maybe that's coming to the fore right now, because his body language in this game was absolutely atrocious. So that's something to watch out for. But look, I'm sure Newcastle will improve, and Eddie Howe, has got to get into him. But I just thought there was something really wrong with their body language in this game for some reason. So that has to improve massively.
It's like it was the defence. It was the defensive play, because Newcastle, what do you assert Newcastle last season, having a really strong defence and warriors at the back. And they were just letting Evan Ferguson just run rings around them and just have so much time on the ball. It made no sense.
To be fair, maybe it contributed the fact that they had Matt Targett at left back and Dan Burn at centre back, as opposed
Botman
to
was out, wasn't he?
And Botman was out. So I think he's a big player for them. But it's no excuse to be that bad, though. Still.
Yeah. Moving on to the Sunday games, Crystal Palace 3, Wolves 2, both of us going for 1-1 on the day. And I thought it was a fairly even game up until the latter stages, maybe the last 20 minutes of the game, where Crystal Palace really came on strong. And you'd probably say they deserved the win towards the end of that game.
Yeah, it looked like it was going to be 1-1, because I think Hwang equalised with 15 minutes to go or so. It actually was 0-0 at half-time, unbelievably, this game. It looked like a really dull game. And then it kind of burst into life in the second half. And Edouard with a really good finish to put Palace 1-0 up. Hwang equalises with a header from a free kick. But then Palace pushing late on, got 2 moments of quality. First were Eberechi Eze with, I thought, an unbelievable touch and finish for his goal. And he is just again showing what a touch of class he is. When they needed a moment of quality, he really stepped up for them in a big moment. And then Edouard sealed the game late in with a really nice tidy finish, cutting inside from the left-hand side and finishing in the far corner. And then Wolves right at the death got a consolation through Marcus Cunha. But Palace, looking at the game, I thought Palace were probably second best for a lot of this game, but they just had the moments of quality going forward. And what do we talk about Wolves? For all their good play, they're just really struggling that forward line to really finish their chances. And again, that was their problem. And I think Palace were probably a bit fortunate to be 3-1 up at the time, but Wolves need to make the most of their good play at the moment, because they got some good players and they got some good ball progression. But when it gets to that final third, they're just lacking. They're really lacking. They need Neto to start stepping up again like he was a couple of seasons ago. They need the forward line to start providing, because at the moment it's really costing them. They don't have the back line, unfortunately, to make up for a poor forward line. Because you've got people like Craig Dawson in the back, no disrespect, but like good Premier League teams, good players like Eze are gonna take advantage of him. Like, he's a solid centre back, but he's definitely one who's, at his age, he's like 33 now. He can be beaten, and so if you've got quality like Eze and Edouard and physical strikers, they're going to expose people like Dawson. So you've got that at the back. You need to be having the clinical edge in the forward line. They don't have that at the moment. That's why they're really struggling. And despite some good performances, how many points are they on now? 3? They've 3 after 4 games, and their performances should probably warrant a bit more than that. But because their forward line, it hasn't.
Yeah, and they've always had this problem with the forward line for the last 3 years at least. Since Raul Jimenez really, had that injury, pretty much they've had this problem. But Crystal Palace, I mean, we're talking about Eze being the only one to pull through for them this season, with Zaha gone, Olise injured. But Oderson Edouard scored 2 goals today. It's his 3rd goal of the Premier League so far this season after the first 4 games, and also scored in the Cup in midweek as well. So maybe there's a new star at Crystal Palace coming through, because I thought Edouard was a really good signing when Palace signed him, but he obviously his debut against Spurs and he completely smashed us that day, but never found that consistency. Even in the starting lineup, he wasn't even consistent to play. But this season, maybe he's growing into the stature there at Crystal Palace.
Yeah, he's a good penalty box striker. I still have my reservations about his overall quality, but definitely if you give him service in the penalty area, he's got a good finish. He's very strong as well, and I think that's where Palace have really struggled to get him involved in the game a lot of the time. They just they tried to lump the ball to him long and expect him to hold it, and he hasn't quite managed to do that. But this season so far, he definitely has stepped up when it comes to finishing his chances. But we've seen these spells from Edouard Edouard before as well. He has a few spells where he's scoring a few games and he goes for long spells without scoring. So I'm not going to get too ahead of myself, but he's definitely had a good start to the season.
Yeah. Next up, Liverpool against Aston Villa. A battering of Aston Villa here at Anfield. 3-0 to Liverpool. Sim went 3-2. I went 3-1. But look, this was pretty much one-way traffic throughout the whole game. Liverpool were breathtaking throughout and well-deserved victors and probably could have scored more than 3.
I was shocked by how easy Liverpool had it in this game. I really thought Unai Emery's side is going to be tailor-made to counteract what Liverpool with the way they play. They're going to have Watkins and Diaby running in behind and they're going to cause Liverpool all sorts of problems. Unai Emery actually changed his formation for this game and was playing with kind of a 5 at the back system.
Like the Tinker Man, isn't
and he tinkered with it.
Tinker Man.
I'm not sure why, because they've been playing quite well, and maybe he was looking at the Newcastle game and thinking he didn't want to repeat of that, but unfortunately that's exactly what happened. And Liverpool pretty much from minute 1, I mean, Szoboszlai scored after 2 minutes, and it was pretty much from then on. To be fair, with your Aston Villa, once you go 1-0 down after 2 minutes, that's the game plan out the window, unfortunately for them. So I got a feel for him a bit, but as soon as it went 1-0, it was just one-way traffic. Darwin Núñez was running in behind, causing all sorts of problems. He hit the post, and obviously that led to the second goal. They were just creating chances at will, Liverpool, against a very solid Villa team who you associate with like a really organised backline. Unai Emery and Villa could not contain Liverpool whatsoever. And Liverpool looked so creative, and not only did they look so creative, every single member of the attack looked like they could get involved in the act and score goals, and everyone was contributing. And this is a Liverpool team without Van Dijk, without Konate. They had Matip and Gomez in there. They didn't have a recognised defensive mid on the pitch. They had a midfield three of McAllister, Curtis Jones and Szoboszlai, and they still dominated. They still really didn't allow Villa any sort of opportunities as well. I mean, Villa's XG throughout the game was 0.66, so they really didn't create too many opportunities, and I was super impressed with Liverpool. And this is what I'm saying. I think they could be in a title challenge this season. I think the signings they made are top notch, and I think in games like this where they probably would have struggled last season and maybe would have dropped points, they made it look so easy, and this is a good Villa team, so super impressive from Liverpool. And Darwin Núñez again.
I mean, what I'd say about a Liverpool title challenge, I think that they can finish second, but I just don't think that might be enough to even put them in a conversation for a title race, because I think just Man City are just going to blow everyone away, and I think Liverpool might be the closest to them, but I got a feeling that the league might get wrapped up very early this season.
I'm looking at Liverpool, man. I just don't see why not. Like, Klopp knows what it takes to keep pace with City. He's done it enough times. They've got the squad for it, in my opinion. So, I mean, on this evidence, I don't see why not.
We shall see how it all unfolds, but let's move on to the last game of the weekend, which was the big one, Arsenal against Manchester United at the Emirates. It finished 3-1 to Arsenal. Sim went for 3-1 to Arsenal, so he gets a big fat 5-pointer. I'm sure you were dancing around the room when Arsenal scored that third goal right at the end.
Not quite.
And I went 2-0 to Arsenal, so I gain a point for this one. But look, it was a really interesting game, actually, because the game starts and you're thinking Arsenal, Martinelli was on fire at the start of this game. He was really causing Manchester United so many problems. But again, Arsenal go 1-0 down at the Emirates. And you're thinking it's the same story all over again. Marcus Rashford gets a really good goal on a transition. Straight away, though, Martin Odegaard equals it up, and probably what Arsenal deserved, to be honest, the equaliser at that point in time. But I thought for the majority of the game, apart from that early spell when Martinelli was really battering Manchester United, I thought like it's very similar to what we've seen from Arsenal this season. A lot of possession without hurting the opposition too much. And Man United kept getting these chances on the transition, which they should have done probably better from with a lot of them. But I think if you take into account the balance of play and the chances both teams created and the possession and everything and the way both teams looked, I would say Arsenal probably just about edged it, but I wouldn't be surprised if this game finished in a draw, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Man United would be very frustrated because I thought they managed the game really well, and there were points where Arsenal threatened to really dominate, but they never really got into that mode where they were super creative. I mean, apart from in the second half especially, apart from that one chance from Saka, which preceded Garnacho's goal, I can't remember too many clear-cut opportunities Arsenal were able to carve out of Man United. And from their point of view, I thought they were defended really well. I thought they had really good control of the game. It was probably going exactly how they wanted it to go at that point, to be honest. If you told Ten Hag how you'd want the game to go when Garnacho scores that goal, he probably would have said something like that. Exactly the game plan was working to perfection. But unfortunately, the Garnacho goal was the big moment because it was a toenail offside. It was so close to be to obviously taking the lead, and that was a really unlucky moment. And then a few things went against them. They got a bit of luck. First of all, I thought the Højlund one, Ten Hag's complaining about it, but I think it's a bit too 50-50 for VAR to get involved. I think if he gives a penalty, if the ref gives the penalty on the day, it probably stands. But I don't think it was enough for VAR to get involved. And then obviously the goal, Declan Rice right at the end gets a lucky deflection off Johnny Evans and ends up being in the back of the net. And again, Ten Hag complaining about a foul on Evans, but I've looked at it again, it's very soft. I can't see VAR getting involved in that. And I think he's clutching at straws and probably just a lot of frustration.
You're looking at Ten Hag after the game, complaining about everything, laying into Jadon Sancho as well. I mean, he's just so salty after that game. And I thought the decisions on the day were probably right, all three of them. And Ten Hag's, I think he's got to take a look at himself, and he has to carry himself with a bit more dignity than the way he's doing it at the moment. He's manager of Manchester United, for God's sake. And the things that he's coming out with in press conferences and interviews after the games just smacks of a man who's under pressure, in my opinion.
I mean, you got to feel for him because things were going well, and then Martinez has to go off, so Maguire comes on, and then Lindelof has to go off, so Evans comes on, and that really cost them, I think, having those two centre-backs in there because they started to really struggle. Jesus was getting so much joy out of Johnny Evans once he came on, and if Martinez and Lindelof were able to stay on, maybe it would have been a different result. So I feel his frustration, and I think Man United, this was a very different Man United performance from a lot of their away performances last season where they got battered, and even against Spurs, where I thought a lot more open in that game than they were in this one. So I thought he would have felt he got the game plan right, but just the luck went against them, unfortunately, and they ended up losing. But look, credit to Arsenal, they stuck in there, they kept going, and they ended up getting the result at the end. So they'll feel like last season when they were getting a lot of late winners, maybe that was like a sign of, for them, champions. But I still feel like it still is not like against United at home last season, even though it was a 3-2, I thought Arsenal played a lot better in that game they did in this one. And they've played 3 of their first 4 games at home, and they've won 3 of them. So they're doing well, they're getting the results, but they still haven't kind of performance-wise hit that level of last season yet.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at Arsenal, and there's not this same kind of vibe as there was last season. And I don't know what it is with Arsenal, to be honest, but they don't seem to be as fluid as they were last season. Maybe it is just early season jitters, and they will kind of grow into it. And I imagine when the North London derby comes around, that will definitely go out the window. But I think you got to give credit to them for sticking in there and getting the results. But they just don't seem to have that same kind of mentality and edge like they did last season. And I'm looking at other teams like Liverpool, even Spurs, Man City, and they all seem to be kind of a level above, not in terms of quality, but in terms of how fluid they are in their play.
At the moment as well, touch on Rashford's goal. Could Ramsdale do better with that? Because he gets a big hand to it. Tips it onto the post and goes in. I felt like I reckon a top keeper saves that. Maybe.
I think you're looking into that one a lot, but
he gets a big hand to it.
I think look, you can, if you're going to be harsh, I think you could say something, but look, I'm not going to say too much about it.
I mean, he gets a big hand to it, so he should be saving it, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Look, I've had my words about Ramsdale before. I don't think he's the top keeper that everyone thinks he is. And I think sooner rather than later, Raya is going to be taking that number 1 spot off him. And you have seen a few dodgy moments already so far this season from Ramsdale. So we'll see what happens. Maybe this was another one to add to his repertoire. But Declan Rice getting his first goal for Arsenal right at the end in the 6th minute of the 7th minute stoppage time. Gabriel Jesus getting the third on 11 minutes of stoppage time. But what about Rasmus Højlund coming on for his first game again for Manchester United? And I thought he looked really good.
I was impressed. What I was impressed most by was his strength. I thought he was really winning that physical battle against Gabriel. And every time after he came on, every time United got the ball, he gave them an outlet to go long and hold the ball up. And it was giving them a lot of joy when he did that. And he was able to find Bruno Fernandes in all sorts of space. And all of a sudden, it was setting United on attacks. He was unlucky not to get a penalty at one moment as well. I thought his strength was astonishing, considering that Gabriel had Martial in his pocket throughout the whole game. Martial barely had a kick. And then Højlund comes on, he's backing into him, and he's winning that physical battle. And Gabriel really struggled, I felt, against him. And he was being bullied a bit by Højlund, which really impressed me. So I think this guy could be a serious player for Man United.
Yeah.
Didn't get a chance, though, to really show his finishing ability.
Yeah, I mean, how long was he on for? He was on for
20 minutes?
20 minutes or something like that. Yeah, just over 20 minutes. And I think like in that short cameo in the 20 minutes, he shows what he's going to bring to a Manchester United team. And it's something they've been missing for so long as well.
They were better when he came on.
Yeah, much better. All right, let's move on to the star men. Sim went for James Maddison, who scored an absolutely brilliant goal against Burnley. No assists on the day. You would have thought if Spurs scored 5 goals, Maddison would probably be more involved. But that's only 1 goal, and Jarrod Bowen got a goal on the Friday night game away at Luton as well. So we end off this week with 5 points each with the star man, 57 to 56 going into the international break. So very close going into game week 5 in a couple of weeks. So there you have it. That is Review the Prem. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts around all the games this weekend, and we'll see you next time.